Turn him over again. Booker scoops it up. Booker brings the boom.
We're bringing the boom. That's what we do. We got the NBA Hardwood show back on a Monday. AP, it's been a while since I've hung out with you because we had the NBA All-Star break, right? And it fell on a Thursday. So it's been a while since I've seen you on a show. So how are things going over there with you?
Yeah, doing really well. And you're right. It has been a minute. And one thing I'm very confident in, Booker is not going to be bringing the boom tonight. The Suns are not on the slate. But yeah, man, going. Things were good. Had a busy weekend. Just the dad life. Daughter was she had a competition down in Tulsa, so my wife was with her, and then it was me and the boy up here for my son. He does swim, obviously, and then a big Midwestern regional meet, which was a lot of fun. We still got the work done though. It was a fun weekend. One thing that was crazy, we had Bobby, me, and a few others were really high on Luka down, obviously, against Denver and the Nuggets on Saturday night, and I locked him. I put him into every single lineup, and I bubbled everything, like absolutely everything, because of the damn Portland Trail Blazers blowing out the Hornets. I think they won by like 50, 60 points. So tilting, having 3-4 guys left in your lineup, knowing they're never going to see the court again, knowing you need just a little bit more to get there, and you have zero chance of doing it. It was definitely a frustrating night, but overall, I can't complain too much. It was a good weekend overall.
Yeah, we had opposite weekends. I was whipping my laptop out at Hooters. You were whipping yours out at a swim meet. So completely different kind of days. Yeah,
all right. I had my Run Pure bag there. We'll get into the thread. We got to get into the thread too before we get into the slate. But I had my Run Pure bag there with all my stuff, obviously, laptop and everything to get the work done. I had like 3 people come up to me and ask if we were a running company. And I had to explain to them what it was, the exact opposite of a running company, basically. But that was the only funny story that I had of the weekend. But, man, I think you need to dive into this little thread. DC told me he was going to be on. He said he was going to come and make sure that the story was told correctly. But he's stuck in the mountains or doing something. He's not on here. I mean, I have no idea where he is, but the thread that he posted was pretty amusing.
Yeah, DC asked me. He sent me a text. I was at the gym, and he said, "Weekend with Travis, yay or nay?" And I said, "Yay." It sounds like a funny idea, so get at it. And I jumped in the pool. I started swimming, AP, and I got out, and my phone was spammed. So it was really funny. A lot of good notifications in there. A lot of good stuff, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can answer any questions behind it if they want. Derek, if you want the tape measuring story, here's the tape measuring story. So, my friend, when I moved back out here, I stayed at my friend's for until my place was ready. And he said, here, cause he moved here probably like 4 months before. So I have this tape measure that I got from some guy, that happened to do something, and he left it there. So he said, just take the tape measure and you can use it. I said, sure. So I took the tape measure, I used it for a little bit. And then when I was on the phone with my mom, and I was measuring something for the couch. It just broke out of nowhere, and now you can't close it. It's impossible to close. Now if I need it, I just
throw it away. Get a new one.
I don't know. I just figured I'd just use it while I have it. I don't know. I mean, I got to go get a new one. It's just I'm not dying to go to Home Depot and buy 1,000 tools and everything like that. So I'll eventually get there and get that stuff. But
yeah. I think what we need to do is we need to start a little GoFundMe or something from the community. Hire a design team maybe to head on over to Mangones and get the place looking nice and nice and neat and all put together. How about that, man? Going? Is that something?
I don't need one, but if people want to do it, I'll happily take free money, right? Like I'm not going to complain, but it's a good time.
It's good stuff.
Like you said, the other thing to it, this is my take on AP, and a lot of people are different. People assume you have to have everything in like 2 weeks. I don't need these things. I can take my time to get them until I get it right. I will say, with taking my time, I've came up with better ideas so far. So actually, the TV on the floor is the interesting part about that is I'm still debating if I want to buy an even bigger TV. Like, do I buy another TV that's bigger than 65 inches? AP? What's your TV size setup in your basement?
It's what is it like 80, 84, and then 2 60s on each side or something. I forget, but
yeah, I have a 65. Should I go bigger with the other one? I feel like I made a mistake and I should go bigger.
Yeah, I mean, TVs are so cheap nowadays. Like you might as well go all out with them.
It's either I go big, it's either I go like the one and then bigger with the other, or I go big and then 2 smaller. I think the move is to go big, but I don't know. Still debating.
I mean, when we hung the large TV downstairs in the basement, my buddy that came over to help me literally squeezed the TV so hard that it shattered it and like broke the TV, and I had to send it back. He did it twice. And so I'm like, all right, dude, I'm not having you come over anymore to help me hang this. I got my neighbor. He came over. We're laughing. But hey, Best Buy, they returned it and didn't have to pay anything. So got three different TVs, broke 2 of them, and now the one that's still there, it's still working, it's still kicking.
There you go. Yeah. I got to figure out if I want the 80. I think I want the 80, so we'll see.
I mean, you can get I was looking at the DraftKings store. You can get like a 90-something inch for 150 crowns. I mean, you got the crowns.
Does the DK
maybe it's more than that.
Does the DK score actually have TVs? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, it has it's a 90 or 100. Someone in chat, they will be able to defend me on this. They got the big boy TV in there. I was looking at it. I it's under 500,000 crowns. I'll say that. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure.
I honestly didn't know they had it. So there we go. But let's dive into the slate. Obviously, a lot to talk about. Not as many injuries that we're waiting on, AP, I would say. Would you agree? I mean, I guess a couple more popped up not too long ago, but it's not a massive injury day. There's injuries that came through and already happened that are going to be important. Obviously, the Utah Jazz, who we will get to and we will discuss.
Mangone, wouldn't you agree? We're at that point of the season now. It's still a risk, and there's still going to be weird things that happen, but and a lot of it that will happen will be in relation to tanking, but we don't have the trade situation anymore. Most teams know what their rotations are. They're not like trying to figure things out outside of maybe like Atlanta and probably a few others. But this slate feels pretty good. Like we have Alexander Sarr, he's questionable. Jalen Clark, who's been starting, he's questionable. And Tyrese Maxey's probably the other big one, but that's the 7 p.m. lock. That's in that 7 p.m. lock window, so we'll have that. I also think like TJ McConnell is somewhat important because if he's out, potentially increases the floor of Halliburton from a minute standpoint. But a lot of the news is in on this slate, and it's a good slate. I like this slate. I think it's a really interesting multi-entry slate.
Yeah, you like this slate a lot. I think this slate, I agree with like the rotation stuff you're saying. The problem is obviously predicting like who's going to go off, right? Because this is definitely one of those weirds. I mean, it's one of those slates where, like, for instance, I don't like games like Brooklyn, Washington, because you feel forced to play it. That's obviously the first one. You feel like you're forced to kind of get exposure to it, and you don't know which way it's going to go. So that's obviously one we'll dive into first. That's the first one on the slate. The Brooklyn Nets, so they were very chalky this weekend. I saw Killian Hayes on FanDuel. I saw he was like 37%. I don't know what he was on DK, but he was just super chalky. These guys are they're missing D'Angelo Russell. Cam Johnson's there, Nick Claxton, Keon Johnson, Zaire Williams, and Trenton Watford. That's likely the starting 5. Maybe one of those guys doesn't play and they start either a Jalen Wilson or a Killian Hayes. But for the most part, AP, like you said, we kind of know the rotations of the Nets. I think in this spot, I think it's kind of predictable. The problem is the range of outcomes on it, right? Like I know Cam Johnson's going to get between like 24 and 32 minutes. It just depends on how the game goes. I don't know how the game's going to go, but that's kind of how they're going to be. Also, the Washington Wizards, I think their rotation is a bit more predictable now. We know it's going to be Jordan Poole's going to be running the show, Chris Middleton in there, Koulibaly, Kaishan George, and probably either a Sarr or a Holmes. I doubt they play Sarr and Holmes together. And then, of course, they got their bench guys. They mix and match. Vucevic, Chapini, Carrington, Kispert. So, yeah, it's a game I think we have to consider and get exposure to. I'd be curious how you're attacking this game, though, because for me, AP, I think I'm going to be lower on the Washington side, and then the Nets side, I might be lower on them too, just because I think there's really good values later on throughout the slate.
Yeah, so obviously, really interesting game. The Nets coming off an awesome win over Philly. I mean, what a disaster the 76ers are. I think, as DFS players, we're not as like in tune to what the standings are, but I'm pretty sure Philly is below the Brooklyn Nets in the standings. And Philly in that game, they were fully healthy. They had everyone, and Embiid was terrible. I made the mistake in playing Joel Embiid. I thought it was a great spot. My reasoning for doing so was I was moving off Jokic. There's something right now in just from the matchups, like bigs against the Lakers is one of the worst flowchart spots, and it was reaffirmed against the Nuggets. A lot of that might be due to them just running small ball lineups, whatever. But that was like the reason I was under on Jokic in that on that slate, and over on Embiid, and he was terrible. It was a bad play by me. Philly right now, they should just tank, and they either should blow everything up, but they definitely should tank and try to get into the lottery and get the, obviously the number one pick if they could, or at least a top 5 pick. That's what I would do if I'm Philly. Just an absolute disaster. But back to this game. So the Washington rotation right now is an absolute disaster. And the last slate not over the weekend, but it was a slate before that. I think it was against Milwaukee. The first time we saw Jordan Poole with the additions of Chris Middleton and these other pieces. I made the mistake of playing Jordan Poole in that matchup against the Bucks. I thought everyone was going to be highly motivated. They were. The Wizards, they have too many bodies. They have way too many bodies. It's a team that when they're relatively healthy, I'm full fading. That's the case tonight. I saw everything I needed to see with Middleton. He played 24 minutes. He is what he is. He's new team, same type of player. I see no reason for them to push him. And really, it just makes the situation easy. And it's going to be one that I'm consistently fading unless pricing changes. If these guys are all cheap, it would be a different story. That is not the case tonight. They are, however, a team that we can continue to target. I do think that they have some good defensive pieces individually. As a team, they're still kind of a mess. But Koulibaly, obviously a good on-ball defender. Keyshawn George has really started to impress me on the defensive end of the court. His defensive prowess has really started to increase, in my opinion. Or maybe it's just the short recent sample. We will see. But he has definitely been better. It's still a new team when you think of the additions of Middleton, and when you think of good defensive teams, they're teams that have good chemistry, talk, because every team's switching, moving, back and forth. And when you acquire new pieces, usually there's a few holes defensively, and so that's what you're going to see. I do think the Nets are in play. I really want to prioritize the guard position. I think it's a loaded slate, especially the point guard position. And when you think about it, Killian Hayes is point guard only. You have 3 slots that you can play him. And I have many other point guard only plays that I would much rather prioritize over him. And we have better forward value. We have better shooting guard value that we can lean on and center value. So Killian Hayes, likely someone I'm not playing. I do think Cameron Johnson, by far the most interesting play in this game, 6,400. He's just too cheap. He's been playing over 30 minutes. It really comes down to like Nets, are you done tanking? Are they going to try to, make a run? I mean, really, it's a great matchup for Cameron Johnson, 6,400. He's someone I want to go right back to. And then Nick Claxton. The one thing about the Wizards, they're still giving up monster numbers to opposing bigs. It's a great spot for Nick Claxton. He's looked awesome. He has 40 DK points in 2 of his last 3 games. And if you run it back a little bit further, he had a really big game against Miami not long ago too. So I think Nick Claxton is fine. Cameron Johnson is fine. And then if I were to play a guard, it would probably be Keon Johnson. We have so many other better guard plays on this slate. I'm not sure I want to force in a Keon Johnson in this early window.
Yeah, guard is definitely important. I'll mention Don Yeezy said he asked about Watford. I would be curious to hear what you think you're going to do with Watford AP, because he is looking to be 22% owned right now. Now that could change by the time we get the lock, but I think that's really high, and I'm curious to get your opinion on what you're doing with Chalk, Trent, and Watford.
So, I mean, again, like this is why I really like the heat map, because I break it out by positions and then also by lock time. And my problem with like Trent and Watford is, one, it's in the early window at 7 Eastern, but 2, like Niang has been awesome. He's power forward, small forward. You have you're going to have the Utah Jazz situation that like they have 9 bodies I think that are active tonight. So there's going to be value there. You have you also have Yabusele, who I'm still torn on him as well. I just think that there's going to be better plays. And Trent Watford, he's a bench guy. He's going to come off the bench unless we get a different starting lineup. And he's going to play around 22 to 23 minutes. And he's 4,700. So I get that he is currently projecting well. I do think as we approach lock that's likely going to change. So I'm not too high on Trent and Watford. I think there's going to be better plays available later on in the slate. So it's not a guy I'm probably going to.
All right, next game up, Philadelphia 76ers, Chicago Bulls. Definitely a game that I think is important to discuss. For one, Joel Embiid, he is out. We know he's missing this game, but Tyrese Maxey's questionable. And if Tyrese Maxey plays, I still think there will be plays that get ownership, right? I still think people will be interested in Kelly Oubre in a matchup against the Chicago Bulls. AP, you have loaded up against the Chicago Bulls on overs early in the season, so we know this is a DFS spot to target. So Kelly Oubre, 5.5K, you can play him at small forward or shooting guard. Paul George, 7.1K, another guy you can put at the small forward position. Both those guys are coming 20% or higher in ownership. Tyrese Maxey, 9K. If he happens to play, he'll be a good play. And if he sits, that's going to boost the ownership on Oubre and George along with the projection. And then we got Grimes, who's mentioned in the chat. Yes, we can't forget Quentin Grimes. He has thrived when some of these Sixers have missed. So if a Tyrese Maxey misses, man, that would really give him a little bit of a boost at 5.6K. And, of course, we got Yabusele, who he's okay at 4.9. I don't think he's a terrible play if you get Maxey out. Then we got the Bulls side of the ball. We should discuss that. You got Vucevic, who's clearly the guy over there. It's a revenge game if you care about that. He played for the Sixers many years ago, but it is a revenge game, 7.5K. You have Kevin Huerter coming in at, 20% owned AP at 3.6K. I don't love that at a loaded guard position today. Maybe you like that more than me, but I don't. Lonzo Ball, 5K. And then you got Kobe White or Josh Giddey, which just feels like a roulette wheel each night where if you're an MME guy, I don't think you can ignore Kobe White and Josh Giddey, which means I'll be looking at their ownerships. They're both at 14% over at DraftKings, but that's kind of the landscape of this game. I don't think it's one we can completely ignore AP. I also think it's better than the game we just talked about. So what are you doing with Bulls and Sixers?
Yeah, so if like with Philly right now, they're an absolute disaster. They as we just said, they should be in tank mode. If Maxey plays, he is the guy that's going to go all out, try hard type. And he would be a really, really nice play, obviously, at his price. And what has been a smash matchup. Like the Bulls, they're still playing with a lot of pace. They're guard-heavy lineup still. And they're one that Maxey and like with his type of game that he would definitely be able to attack and put up a nice number. So this is key news. I'm actually happy that it's the early window because it would obviously flip the slate. We would then have Jared Butler, who would likely start and be a really nice value play, and he would take up one of those point guard position spots most likely. Quentin Grimes too. So the last time we saw Embiid out and Maxey, everyone thought Paul George would have himself a game, and it was Quentin Grimes that took over. I think it was the game against the Nets. Yeah, he went off for 54 DraftKings points, absolutely smashed. Massive usage rate, 28%. The interesting thing about this last game too is Embiid he looked like he didn't care at all. So I really don't know what to make from it. I'm not playing Paul George. He's looked so bad. I mean, think about this. If we go back, not the game this weekend on Saturday, but the previous one against the Nets before the All-Star break, Joel Embiid was out, Tyrese Maxey was out. This was Paul George's game to kind of showcase his stuff. He played 36 minutes. He took 7 shots in those 36 minutes. If you go to yesterday or 2 days ago, Saturday, he played 40 minutes and he only took 10 shots. That's just, I don't know. I mean, whenever I watch Paul George play right now, he looks extremely dusty. So I'm not falling for that trap. Kelly Oubre, I do have significant interest in. It is chalk that I'm fine eating. And a lot of that has to do with his price, the minutes upside. Clearly, he's going to play a ton of minutes, but the positional flexibility too. We can put him into that small forward spot, allowing us to prioritize some of these other guard plays. So I would have a ton of interest in Kelly Oubre. It would be nice if Quentin Grimes was also small forward eligible, but he's shooting guard eligible. So if Maxey's out, I have a ton of interest in Grimes, Kelly Oubre, and then it would be Jared Butler. Yabusele, I think from a price standpoint, you'd have to consider him. I'm still not 100% sold. In that game against the Nets, him and Andre Drummond split time almost evenly. So I do think there's risk there. He has yet to play over 25 minutes for a while now, too. So I don't think it's like, at least recently, things could change. But what we've seen over the last couple of weeks, they're not really pushing his minutes like they were earlier in the season. Obviously, that could change. It's a tanking team. I still think that they know what they have in Yabusele. So if they are tanking, like why push them? Why not try out some of these other guys? You have Dave Roddy, Adam Bona, like some of these other players. So I do think there's some risk there with Yabusele. But so the Philly side of this game, obviously really interesting news we got to wait on. The more interesting side is the Bulls and Josh Giddey. He has been awesome. Like over the weekend, he smashed. His role looks really nice. He went into the Garden and played 34 minutes, 58 DraftKings points. He was dishing dimes. He was grabbing boards, 16 rebounds, just absolutely ridiculous. And he's hitting shots right now too. And he backed it up with another big performance against the Suns. And now you get a Philly team that's just down on themselves, losing to everyone. They're slow on defense. I think it's a perfect Josh Giddey spot. I think he's one of the better point guard plays on the slate. And I just think at this price tag and like it never seems like he gets a lot of ownership. So I think he's going to end up a great DFS play tonight. I saw early on Lonzo Ball was popping, and I like his ownership projection was high. I think that changes. Like if he's going to be chalked, there's no way I'm playing him. Even though he's starting with AO out, they're still holding him under 30 minutes. He's playing right around 27 to 29 minutes. And you're seeing – so what happens with AO out, it allows them to go elsewhere in the rotation. And I think that's where Kevin Huerter is that's where they're using him. And so he came in, he played 30 minutes against Phoenix. He was 5 for 12 from the field. I think that continues. And again, against a team that's lazy right now on defense, it's a prime spot for Huerter to kind of be a sneaky play to go off. Maybe not sneaky, but to put up a nice number. So I do like Kevin Huerter in this matchup, and I do like Josh Giddey. Vucevic, I'm really torn because there are so many good center plays tonight. I likely won't get there, but again, no Embiid. It's a smaller Philly lineup. I do think it's a spot where Vucevic could get going. I just don't think I'm going to get there. I'm going to be prioritizing a few other center plays tonight.
Yeah. The Bulls, obviously the Ayo Dosunmu injury matters a ton, right? That's one reason why Giddey has been unlocked. Why these are all guys I want to get overweight on. Even I think Buzelis, I think he's got some really good opportunity as well at 4.8K. That's why Herter's popping. So yeah, I think they make sense. I do think White and Giddey are two guys I want to get overweight on for sure on the Bulls side of the ball. You don't have to play them on the same team if you don't want to, right? You can play them separately, but they could go off together. I wouldn't be surprised. Philadelphia, we talked about it. The thing you said about Paul George I thought was interesting, and it wouldn't surprise me if he's just disinterested, right? Like at 7.1K. I will say this, though. If Maxey misses and you look at projections, it'll be hard to fade Paul George, right? Projections will push him. So that's where you either have to make your own.
You can fade him. I'm telling you, you can fade him. He sucks. He's terrible. Like if he beats me, he beats me. He looks bad. Like he looks really, really dusty. So I don't know if he goes off. I mean, man, to your point, what do you do in these spots? Like, let's just say ownership projections are crazy high. I mean, like if you don't like the play, you're manually bumping them down, right? Like that's what I would do tonight if that's what happens.
So if I think a play is like a play like Paul George, where I think he's clearly the guy, he's clearly going to pop in projections. There's nothing I can do about it, right? If I just run the projections, and I think he's going to have like 50% ownership, I just go under. I go under like 35 or 30. Sometimes I go either like sometimes I'll go 45, sometimes I'll go 25 or even 20 if I don't like it, but it just depends. Typically when I do that AP, I do that with like a guy like Jordan Poole, where it's a team like the Wizards, where I just think they get absolutely blown out, right? And I kind of play a little bit for the blowout in that factor that they lose that. Like my bet is I'm going under on this guy. I know he's a good play, but I'm hoping he loses that fourth quarter rotation. That's sort of how I play it typically. So hard to do against the Bulls. I'll say that, right? It's hard to play for blowout, but I think that's something I'll kind of wait and see. And if people have questions in the Discord, I'll happily answer how I'm doing it once we get there. But
the other like argument right now against Vucevic, so they acquire Zach Collins, obviously Kevin Huerter too, Trey Jones, but we're slowly starting to see Zach Collins like play his way into more minutes. I mean, last game was a close game against the Suns. They were battling back and forth. Vucevic played 30 minutes, and Collins played almost 19. So I don't like the rotation as much as I used to. And that's why I'm so high on Giddey in this match. It seems like Giddey, and I say it and it'll change, but who's going to take that role? Like Trey Jones? Not if Giddey plays the way he has the last two nights. So I think Giddey's role right now is rock solid, where Vucevic, again, rock solid role, but you're seeing Zach Collins slowly dip into it a little bit. So maybe something not to read into too much, but Collins did play nice in this game against the Suns.
Yeah, I would say my top four plays in this game are Giddey, White, Grimes, and Oubre. No particular order, but I think those are the four that I want to probably be overweight on, and I kind of agree. Like, I think Grimes could be way better than Paul George in this spot. Like I said, I think Paul George, if you think about his career and everywhere he's played, like it's pretty easy to be disinterested right now in playing basketball in this situation. So not a huge fan. And I'll just say this, Maxey could be like unowned if he plays very late, and that could be an interesting tournament play. But all right, 2 games down. Let's keep this thing moving along. Next one up is the Denver Nuggets and the Indiana Pacers. I believe Big T will be at that game watching Jokic, so do what you want with that info. Jokic against the Pacers, 12K. The question is, will we have the value to do it? If Aaron Gordon starts at 5-3, I think he's an intriguing play. But this team is a lot more healthy, right? That's kind of one of the issues here. Jamal Murray, 7-7. It feels expensive when you got Westbrook back, Porter Jr., and all these guys. Even Christian Brown. Now he's 5'8", right? He was 6'6" or 6'4", but still 5'8". Doesn't seem like super ideal right now, even though it's Pacers matchup, which is a high total. Then we got Miles Turner, 6.2K. I do like to say, hey, Miles Turner at 6'2" has a ceiling, right? I just think at that price, you can't ignore that. Problem is, Do you want to do it with the Jokic spot? Don't know if that's exactly what I want to do there. Of course, the TJ McConnell news, that's important. He is only 4K AP. You talked about that at the start. You said TJ McConnell is going to affect how you attack Tyrese Halliburton, as I like to say, right? Not Halle or Hallie, Halliburton. So Mr. Tyrese could be a really good play if TJ McConnell is out. But talk about how you're attacking that news and the rest of this game.
God, he's one of the more like frustrating players to not only like roster, but to play sometimes. And then he'll randomly show up and just, have a beautiful night like he did against the Clippers. Played only 30 minutes, was incredibly efficient. And that's what you need from him right now, because we can't trust Rick Carlisle. The rotation is just an absolute disaster. Like, look at all the dudes that he can rotate in. And I say it right now that TJ McConnell, if he's out, maybe we see more Tyrese Halliburton minutes. Like, maybe we get a more secure rotation. Who knows? Like, he'll probably put like Ben. Actually, he probably subs out Andrew Nembhard even earlier, and then has Nembhard run the second unit. And then you see Ben Shepherd get a little bit more run, and he probably keeps Halliburton around his 31, 32 minutes. Man, the Pacers are just so frustrating. But what that deep rotation allows them to do is play with a lot of pace. And that's what Rick Carlisle likes to do. And obviously they're having a lot of success with it. They're like third or fourth in the East. So obviously they know what they're doing, and they really turned it on. They struggled to start the season, and they've been really good. So like, I know Big T texted us and he said, bet the Nuggets. And I hear you, Big T, but this Pacers team right now is playing some good basketball. I don't feel as confident as he does in the Nuggets getting the win tonight. Like the Pacers are playing good, and they're especially playing good at home. I mean, you got back-to-back wins over the Grizzlies and the Clippers, and they weren't just like, little wins. These were not blowouts, but double-digit wins. I don't know. I think they look pretty good right now. I think it's a tough, a tricky spot for the Nuggets, especially after losing at home to the Lakers. And man, if we wanted to go back and talk about the Lakers, I could do that all day. Like they looked so good with Luka. Obviously, one game sample, but it'll be interesting watching them moving forward. So as far as this game goes for DFS, a couple things. The Nuggets healthy, a lot of mouths to feed. That typically doesn't matter, obviously, with Nikola Jokic. As I wrote in the playbook, top stud on the slate. If the value is there, you try to find ways to get him in. I'm not too worried about this matchup against the Pacers and Miles Turner. It comes down to, is Jokic going to do his thing? Is he going to be aggressive? I mean, he took 7 shots against the Lakers. Like, I couldn't believe that, Mango. Like, I was watching the game at the meet. I had it on my little iPad, so it was hard to watch it super closely. But man, he did not look as sharp, and he wasn't as aggressive. So maybe he comes out tonight and maybe he's ultra aggressive. And if so, yeah, he would be in line for a really good night. But you're going to be able to get Jokic if you want to. The value is going to be there on the slate if you trust the Utah pieces, if you trust like Niang, who we'll talk about, who's 4,300. Maybe you like Kevin Huerter. If you go that route, with Bryce Sensabaugh, you're going to have the value to make it work. So Nikola Jokic, top stud on the slate. You can get to him. You can get to him with the value that obviously we're discussing. The other pieces are a little bit trickier. Aaron Gordon, I liked him better when he was upper 4K. I think was fine. MPJ, like they just have so many mouths to feed. So like MPJ, can he go off? Yeah, he definitely can. He had that streak where he looked incredible. And now you see him hesitating a little bit. Like he's passed up a few shots. Like when he loses confidence, it's just bad. Like the Nuggets, when he is hitting shots and especially from the outside, they look so good and unbeatable. But right now he just doesn't look, it looks like he lost that confidence. He could get it back at any time. He's a true shooter. But again, there is that risk there. Jamal Murray, 7,700. Individually, I think he is fine, but it's not like I'm rushing to get there and to play him. Russell Westbrook, I mean, shot the ball 17 times. He didn't make too many of those shots, but his usage was absolutely crazy. Maybe that had to do with him playing the team that he was on for a short period of time in the Lakers in that last game. But he's back to that 25 to potentially 27-minute role that we saw him in. But he's 5,700. I'm not going to go there. So the Nuggets side, outside of Jokic, it's hard for me to get to any of those other pieces. And man, I just like Siakam. It's a bad matchup. Turner has been pretty good. We saw this like last year after the trade deadline and the All-Star break. He was motivated for like a week, and then the old Miles Turner came back. I will say bigs have had nice games against Jokic in this team, so it's not a terrible flowchart spot. And then you have like Aaron Nesmith and these guys. And look, this is part of the rotation that's hard to trust. Like if Nesmith isn't having a good game, you've seen Mathurin come off the bench. And like Mathurin off the bench has been better than Mathurin starting. It's absolutely mind-blowing how that works, but it does. So the Pacers are the harder team to figure out. It's why I said at the start of the show that it's a good multi-entry slate, because I think individually a few of these pieces could go off. I just don't have a lot of confidence in them. So if you're playing 150 lineups, you can kind of dabble, mix and match, get Halliburton in a couple lineups, maybe, get Miles Turner in there and pair him with Jokic if you want to do that. But despite the massive total here, I don't have a ton of confidence overall in this game from a DFS standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say this, AP. If you really want to buy low on like some of these price tags, I totally get it. For me, I don't want to get too overweight on this game. I think there's good games later on. I did see a question in the chat about props for some of the games. I don't remember where it was. I think it was King Mal who said it. But I would say I had a Sar prop I just saw, but that he just got ruled out. I don't know if you saw that, AP, but Alex Sar got ruled out. So can't give you that. I had Grimes props were popping. The problem with Quentin Grimes props, you can't really bet them, I feel like, right now, because if Maxi's out, they were unders and you'll just be screwed. So I kind of stay away from those spots. A guy I did like that you could bet his prop in this game. You could bet Benedict Mathurin. You bet his under on 14.5 points. Benny Max under 14.5 points. I think that's not a bad one. And then I know you don't like Siakam, but his rebounds and assists was 10.5, and that looked like an over. So probably just a little long.
With Sar out, this, and again, like it's tough because center is loaded, but you're gonna see Rashawn Holmes start. He's 4,900 against the Nets. Yeah, a fine play, but this Tristan Vucevic. I watched the game against the Spurs and against Wemby, and he went off in 20 minutes, like absolutely nuked, could not miss. Was like absolute nails from three. I mean, he was doing everything. And against a tough matchup against Orlando over the weekend, he had himself a pretty nice game. Really nice usage rate. I think I would have more interest in him as a tournament play. You snag the savings, use it to get yourself a stud like Jokic and maybe a couple of those other values. You got to go double center if you go that route. I think I would be more inclined to do that than firing up Rashawn Holmes. I don't know if you have an opinion on that.
I tend to agree, especially because I do play more on the other site than DraftKings, and he's forward eligible over there. At least he was this weekend. I had some exposure to him, so it's nice to have the forward eligibility. He is only center eligible, but I agree. I think Vucevic is a really good play. We did just get TJ McConnell ruled out, which that's some big news. It sounds like AP will be firing up Tyrese in his core. Is that looking like the case, AP?
I can't do it in my core, but I do think he's a slightly better play. I don't know. What's your take on that? I don't. Hold on. Let me.
It helps.
It has to help his minutes because they love TJ McConnell. You're always seeing at least one of Halliburton or McConnell on the court. At least I think you are. I like Halliburton when he's staggered with Nembhard, because when Nembhard's out there, he wants the ball in his hand. It's like they flip-flop. So it's like what we've seen with Garland and Mitchell at times, where they kind of take turns, with the ball in their hand. And that's what you see with Nembhard and Halliburton. So without TJ McConnell, I think now you're going to see one of Nembhard or Halliburton on the court at all times. It's a great matchup against the Nuggets. Yeah, Halliburton's definitely a better play now.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can core him though.
I think he's a good play. I think I like him over Siakam, right? If you told me to pick who's my favorite pacer, I think
100%.
I think he's definitely the guy. Bench guys, I do think it helps Benny Mac for sure. It gives him a little bit more usage his way, but I don't want to go overboard with it. I'll at least say that. Next game up, Clippers and Pistons is the last game in the 7 o'clock window. Definitely an important game. You know why? Norman Powell out, Kawhi Leonard out. What does that mean? The system is back. It's just James Harden, and he's going to run the show. He's not with 7K, but he is the best. I mean, one of the best plays in the slate, right? I mean, it's hard to ignore him. I think he's a really good play. I like Zubac in this spot too. I think it's going to help him a ton. You're going to see him play a pile of minutes at 7.5K. He's another good play. We saw Cade Cunningham. I know in his post-game interview the other day, he said he's sizzling, and that is correct. He was absolutely sizzling the other night. 14, 4, 24 with 76.25 DK points. It is hard to ignore Cade Cunningham as a spend on this slate. Then we got Tobias Harris in a revenge game. Don't look out for that AP, 6.1K. Also Thompson, who slid on the starting lineup at 5.6. We got guys obviously to discuss. And then on the Clippers side, from a cheap value perspective, you're missing Powell, Kawhi, and Simmons, right? So Zubac likely starts. You got Chris Dunn, 4.4K. You could assume he would be an intriguing value in this spot that I would not want to completely ignore. He should start. He's looking to get a little bit of ownership, only 15% though, which doesn't seem like enough for me. And when you look at the rest of this team, you got Bogdan Bogdanovic, Beauchamp, Patty Mills, Kobe Brown, Derek Jones Jr., Amir Coffey. Like, there's just not a lot of guys on this team. So I think some of these secondary pieces, specifically Chris Dunn, are really looking appetizing to me on this slate. Curious to see how you're handling the Clippers and the Pistons.
That's funny. I mean, my only issue with Chris Dunn is he's a low usage guy that doesn't score a lot. You're relying on peripheral stats, mainly steals and blocks, which are typically highly unpredictable. And he's priced, he's 4,500. It's not like he's in the 3Ks or a flat 4K now. And he's at that position that I'm prioritizing in the guard position. So that's my argument against Chris Dunn. I do like James Harden. Harden has been cooking, as is Cade, but Harden looks really good right now. I think what we see is we're going to see more of the Harden to Zubac. I think Zubac at 7,500 against Jalen Duren is a phenomenal play. I think you compare those two. Again, I'm not super high on correlation in NBA, but again, I think this is a spot where those two are definitely going to correlate very well. My other worry with a Chris Dunn, but again, it could be an Amir Coffey type, is if Bogdanovic comes in and starts hitting some shots. Now, again, he's had a really bad year. But Ty Lue played him 29 minutes against Indiana this last game. Shot wasn't there. He was 4 for 13, but he could take minutes from a Chris Dunn or Amir Coffey type. So I do think the Pistons right now are awesome. I love this Pistons team. I love watching them play, mainly Cade Cunningham. I hate that Jaden Ivey isn't here because I think they would be even that much better with him, especially defensively. But without him, defensively, they're a team that you can attack. That's what we've seen. We saw that game against the Hawks. There's absolutely no defense play. Trae Young went off. Cade Cunningham went off. That was yesterday. 300 points scored. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. We're not going to see that same type of environment. The Clippers don't play that way. They don't play up in pace, but they're still the Clippers are still going to be able to target this Pistons team just because they lack that defense that Jaden Ivey brought to the group. So I think James Harden, I think Zubac, we should have plenty of interest. I'm struggling to trust the peripheral pieces of the Clippers, the secondary pieces, the Dunns, the Coffeys. There's ways to where these guys could maybe lose a little bit of run, but again, they're a pretty thin roster right now. It's mainly Bogdan, if he goes off, I mean, you have what? Patty Mills, he's not going to get any run. Eubanks, like, he sucks. Marjan, like, he's not going to get any run. Like, we should see a pretty tight rotation from the Clippers in a really good matchup. The more I'm talking about it, the more I really think Harden and Zubac are just phenomenal plays tonight. And I don't think you need to force a run back. And it would be hard to force Cade. I think you could do it. But again, you don't need to force Cade as a run back or anyone on the Pistons side. There's just so many other good plays. So for me, James Harden, Zubac, tons of interest in them. And I don't know. Unless you talk me on to Chris Dunn, I might fade that chalk if he ends up being a popular play.
I mean, right now he's like 14%. I could see it swinging up to 20 or go the opposite way and swinging to like 10. So I do think he's better on FanDuel than DraftKings because of the stocks. I will say that. I think that matters a little bit. That's kind of his role on the team. One guy I did not talk about on the Pistons that I think is intriguing that maybe I can convince you on. If we think this Clippers team is going to struggle defensively, which I think they should struggle defensively more in this game, Malik Beasley at 5'4". I mean, if he gets hot, right, he has a ceiling. I don't think he's like a great, like, I don't know. He's a fine single entry play, but I like him more in MME formats. I'll say that. And if you look at it, look at his game logs, he's been pretty safe overall. He pops off for big games here and there. People are asking about in the chat. Rumlake's asking about All-Star and why he only plays 25 minutes. He
got in foul trouble last game, and that's why Beasley got more run. He could not keep his hands to himself, but they're holding him around 28 minutes right now.
But they only hold him there, right? And the reason why they only hold him there is because some of like the past medical stuff that he's dealt with. I don't know if it was heart or blood clots or what it was, but I know there's medical stuff there. That's why they've kind of been cautious with him. But I'm with you. Love loading up on Zubac and Harden in this spot. Let's get to a game we always want to target. We always want to target the Atlanta Hawks, right? We always want to take teams against them. Problem is the team is the Miami Heat. Tyler Hero off a massive game. The problem is the game was yesterday. I don't know if he's going to shoot that well again on the second night of a back-to-back, but he's 8.5K. Bam Adebayo, 8.3. Andrew Wiggins, 6'5". Khalil Ware, 6'3". But it's the Atlanta Hawks matchup, right? I wouldn't be surprised if any of these guys popped off. One guy I do like a lot is Okongwu. I've said it over and over on these shows. Just at his price at 6.1K, it's too cheap for the upside he presents. I'll keep playing him. Dyson Daniels, another guy I like in this spot. Listen, his minutes are nice and secure. He's going to always play because he's so great defensively. I like Dyson Daniels at 6.9K. The rest of the guys, like the Niangs, the Mohamed Gays, Capellas, I'm not that interested in them in this matchup. So it's really just maybe cycling through these expensive Heat options that are above 6K. And the two guys I talked about, Dyson Daniels and Okongwu. That's really what I'm mainly looking at, AP. How about you?
Real quick before I touch on this game, we had a question about Lonnie Walker, and I mean, if they started him, maybe, but he played 9 minutes, all in the first half, mind you. Did not play in the second half. Maybe it's because the game was tight, and this is what's even more mind blowing with Philly is if you look at that rotation against a Nets team without many key guys, I mean, it looked like a playoff rotation. It was like absolutely insane. So if you look at the first half of that game, Lonnie Walker played 9 minutes. I mean, maybe gets you 18, 19, maybe 20. I don't know. Why not play Kevin Huerter, who at least showed us 30 minutes last game, and the rotation really made sense for him. He now has, a little bit more rapport with his new team. I would rather go Kevin Huerter for $100 more instead of taking a shot on Lonnie Walker. The Hawks play with a ton of pace. I like this team right now for DFS, and they're trying. Like if you look at, so I charted this out for myself, but if you go back to February 2nd, it's a 9-game sample. Trae Young's averaging almost 40% true offensive usage rate. He's also averaging just under 24 field goal attempts a game. And he's also averaging almost 55 DraftKings points a game. It's absolutely ridiculous, like his role right now. He's obviously trying hard. He wants wins. And he said that, and now he's backing it up. And we should like that from a DFS standpoint. I'm curious to see where his ownership will come in at, because I think he's a really nice play tonight. I know it's the second in of back-to-back. There's risk there, but it's Trae Young. I think he's going to come out firing like we've seen over the last month. And 9,400 just feels too cheap. And I think depending on how the news shakes out, maybe goes a little bit overlooked. So I have a ton of interest in Trae Young. And when you look at this Hawks team right now, it's Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, and Anike Okongwu. That's who they're kind of building this rotation around. And then you see guys like Georges Niang carve out a really nice role for himself. I know they're starting Mohamed Gay, but it's Niang, the guy that has the 30-plus minute upside. And look, like this guy he shot the ball 20 times yesterday against Detroit. Obviously, that game was like absolute bonkers. We're not going to see 20 shots from him. But if you go back to the Knicks, 16 field goal attempts. So the role right now is really nice for him off the bench. I think he's a fine forward play. Richacher, he's going to be volatile. Like, so in tournaments, I think he's fine. But if you're like a 1-3 lineup builder, I wouldn't consider him. It's really Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, or Okongwu, and then Niang off the bench. LeVert priced up now, not even really on my radar. And then on the Heat side, they ran a really tight rotation, or they have been running a really tight rotation, like Hero, Wiggins, Bam, and then Davion Mitchell played just massive minutes yesterday. And they're kind of, if you look at their roster right now, they're kind of forced into this tight rotation, assuming that they want wins. So I think like Hero, I think here's what the Hawks do. They throw Dyson Daniels on him. It's either him or Wiggins, and I would throw him on Tyler Hero. And so I think what that does is it should open things up for Andrew Wiggins and Bam Adebayo. Bam was someone that we were pretty high on. He had that stretch of a couple nice games. I see people trending the other way, kind of off of him. I think it's a really nice spot. We have limited spend-up options at the forward spot. And so I think Bam is going to make for a nice play if you're looking to spend up at the forward position. So I have a ton of interest in this game. I think it's great for fantasy. Tyler Hero, Wiggins, Bam on the Heat side. On the Hawks side, it's Niang off the bench, Okongwu as a tournament center play, and then Dyson Daniels and Trae Young.
Yeah, you did mention the Niang stuff, and I do think his role makes sense because if you look at rotations, right, and you think of Mohamed Gay, he's been getting the start. If he's likely not going to always close. Now, in this matchup, he might close more where they have the double big stuff, but that's where you could probably take advantage of the Niang spot. Maybe he closes instead. So that's where maybe projections can be wrong at times, and you can kind of take advantage of that because sometimes they don't figure out, hey, this guy's more of a spot starter. So something to think about. Good point that I thought you brought up there. And the Trae Young usage. Let's get to the next game up. That game was at 7:30 Eastern. When we just talked about this one is at 8 o'clock Eastern. We got the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Jalen Clark, I know he is questionable for this game. That's not completely nothing with how shorthanded this team is. They're missing Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, and on the opposite side, they are missing Chet Holmgren, right? So that is going to open up some opportunity. Someone like Isaiah Hartenstein at 6'8". I don't think he typically would pop in a spot like this, but I mean, no Rudy Gobert at 6'8". I actually think he's a pretty intriguing tournament play. Also, if we look at ownership in this game, SaberSim is showing every single play is under 10%. And honestly, you tell me I can get Ant Edwards under 10% at 9.3K. I'm kind of intrigued by it. So Ant Edwards at 9.3, I think is intriguing. With no Chet Holmgren, you got SGA. He's always in play as a spend, but I prefer other spends on this slate. Naz Reid feels expensive at 7.9, but I honestly think he can still get the job done. I like Jaden McDaniels a lot at 6'6". I probably like him even more than Naz Reid. He really feels like a guy that they're going to need to step up in this spot. So for me on the Timberwolves side, it's really Edwards, Reid, and McDaniels. Again, expensive guys, but I like them. And then on the OKC side, I think it's mainly Hartenstein for me. I don't like too much more. Maybe you have some other takes for me, AP, but what's your thoughts on the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Minnesota Timberwolves?
Yeah, these spots are kind of tricky. I was really high on Anthony Edwards yesterday, and he got it done, but it was a slate where you saw like what Ant Edwards' performance was. What was it even a top 5 performance? Like there were some like ridiculous DraftKings scores yesterday. I mean, it was just an absurd slate. These are tricky spots though. You have 2 teams that are obviously really good, played yesterday, and now they go and play again today. So it's not only a back-to-back, but it's a back-to-back where you have the same matchup. I definitely don't hate it. It's interesting. I think people are kind of maybe a little hesitant to go right back or to target it. But when I look at this game, I see 9,300 Edwards. His usage is massive. No Randall, many pieces out. And I think at 9,300, he's a phenomenal play. And then Naz Reid has been extremely consistent. Like this dude has been a beast. I know it's not the easiest of matchups, but he's playing all the minutes that he can handle. I think, again, it's a back-to-back, but here's an example. So they played right before the break. They played Milwaukee, got the win. On the second night of the back-to-back, they played OKC on the 13th. He played 37 minutes. So he played more on the second night than he did on the first night. So I think Naz Reid is going to be fine. And look, they're like the Timberwolves and Anthony Edwards. They're not a team, like especially Anthony Edwards. He's just not going to go in and give up. He's a competitor. He's going to want to go in and get the win. So I think we get these guys at lower ownership than what they should be. And one thing that I mentioned was we don't have a lot of spend up forward options on the slate, which should lead everyone to prioritizing the guard spend ups. So I do think potentially like a Naz Reid at 7,900 could come in at much lower ownership than what he should be. So I have interest in him and Anthony Edwards. The Thunder side is always tougher for me. They have so many guys. Their rotation is very difficult to predict outside of SGA. And the matchup is not as easy when factoring in their deep rotation too. So obviously the Wolves have a lot of good defenders, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jaden McDaniels, and company. So I think you get a tighter rotation on the Minnesota side. Maybe SGA goes off at like no ownership. I'm not really considering him, but he would be a very contrarian play. I mean, he went off for 70 yesterday, so obviously he can do it. I mean, Mangone, are you playing SGA, or did you say it was Hartenstein only on the OKC side? You're on mute.
Sorry, I'm mute. I don't love SGA. I'll just say this. I just think I'd rather spend my salary in other ways. I think that's kind of the problem that I'm running into. Like, when it comes to point guards, I'd rather play Cade. I'd rather play James Harden. Honestly, I'd rather go to this like second tier of studs where it's like I'd rather play Ant Edwards. I think Halliburton's really good, right? I don't know. I don't need SGA. That's all I'm going to say. So he's not a priority for me. If I get some, great. I mean, he's 5% owned, right? You can always make the case. Yeah. Like Kate Cunningham's 4% owned. You can always make the case that if you can get
he went off for 70 and like. Was that even a factor at his price yesterday with how crazy the slate was?
I don't know if it even was. I mean, obviously the other thing too, AP, you said guard is a really good position today, right? And sometimes when you even put up that huge game, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like with Hero putting up the score he put up, Kate Cunningham, he put up a massive score, Donovan Mitchell. Like, I just don't know if the SGA score even actually mattered, especially with what values did at the forward position. Because I noticed most teams, they definitely had Cade and Tyler Hero, right? And it's like, good luck getting SGA if you had those two. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I mean, he was only, 300 less? Like, I don't know. I mean, do you see this game getting a lot of ownership? It seems like it's going way under the radar.
Yeah, this game is completely overlooked. So what I said at the top of this game was every single play is under 10% owned right now. Hartenstein is currently 9.69. You got Ant at 9%. Now, of course, can maybe one of them become 11%? Yes, but all in all, this game is getting completely overlooked. And it's also getting overlooked because the next game has a lot of plays that we're obviously going to want to get to. But no one's going to play this game. This is probably, I don't know if it's the most overlooked game on the slate, but it's definitely one of them.
The other thing that's crazy about SGA, have you ever looked up his free throw attempt numbers?
Yeah, it's insane. He's a merchant.
If you bring this up on Twitter, you're going to have Oklahoma people just all in your replies, just all tilted.
Well,
It's fun.
Did you see the new chant they did? They chanted, instead of trying to get in his head, they just started chanting free throw merchant and then just over and over. So that's and he started smiling and laughing about it. So
look, like, I'll be honest, I don't have SGA in the heat map right now. Like I just that if you look at the guard spot, it's like the upper range is so loaded. Harden, Maxey if he plays, Giddey, who's been awesome, Trae Young, Tyler Hero, Keontae. We haven't even got to like Keontae George, Isaiah Collier, like even Kate. I was just like, I don't think we're going to need SGA on the slate. But if everyone is like overlooking him, I don't know, man, God. I think I'm going to add him back. I think I'm going to have a little bit of interest.
He'll be 5%, right? I didn't
have him in the playbook. Sorry, not the heat map. He's in there.
Yeah, and if you go to the next game, right, and you're playing Kyle Filipowski, who's going to be 39% owned, Bryce Sensabaugh, who's going to be 30% owned, KJ Martin, currently 28% owned. If you're playing those cheap forwards and centers, you have the ability to get SGA if you want to, right? You got Spee at 4K. He's 24% owned. Keontae George, you talked about, 6.5K. He's 24% owned. There is tons of ownership on this game, and for good reason, right? We have the Utah Jazz. They're clearly missing guys. I'll go kind of through who they're missing just so people can kind of be aware. Jordan Clarkson, John Collins, Walker Kessler, Lauri Markkanen, Colin Sexton. All those guys are out. Also, on the Portland side, you got Robert Williams missing and Matisse Thybulle. So I don't completely hate some of the plays on Portland as well. Jeremy Grant at 5'2", he's popping a little bit. Isaiah Collier on Utah, he's 6'2", he's going to pop. Denny Avdia, I think Denny at 6'3" is an intriguing play. And then, of course, Dominic Clingan at 5'5", I think he's a really good play. He's not getting a lot of ownership, but I like him a ton for his ceiling he could show in this matchup. So it's clear we're going to want to get to these Utah guys. Try to sift through how you're playing them, AP. For me, I would say Bryce Sensabaugh has shown that when they don't play guys, he's clearly a really good play. Even if he doesn't start, I think he's a good play at the price of 4.2K. Filipowski is fine. I don't love him. I don't know what they're going to do with the KJ Martin stuff. Keontae George and Isaiah Collier, they're both good options, but they are 6K. It takes a lot to pay off their tag. So for me, that's why Bryce Sensabaugh is play number one. I might even lean KJ Martin as a play number two. I think he could start in this spot. I want to get the starting lineup. I think that's important. But and then on the Portland side, like I said, I think Clingan's probably my favorite play, followed by Denny Avdia at 6.3. So AP breakdown, though, clearly one of the better games on this slate, or one of the higher owned games on this slate, I should say.
Yeah, so these teams last played right after Christmas, and actually, I mean, the game went off 242 points scored. It was close too. Blazers won by 2. The play that I was really interested in. So in that game, Denny Avdia was still coming off the bench. Absolutely new. Put up a 50-piece off the bench. He was going to smash. He was too efficient against the Hornets. I really, really like his role right now. I think he's a core play to build around 6,300. Blowouts, I don't know, man. Like I don't factor it in too much, and especially in a game like this where the spread's 6-7 points, I just typically don't. If you think it's going to blow out and that's why you're fading him, I mean, that's fine. It really just depends on how you play it. But this is like an ideal matchup for a guy like Denny Avdia in his game. He can hit shots if he wants to, or he can create, and that's what we're going to see from him. The other guy I really like is, I don't think anyone's going to play him, or I think he should be pretty unowned. But you see these like random periods where Scoot Henderson goes off and Shaedon Sharpe. Both are going to come off the bench. I think both are interesting. So Tamani Kamara, I played him. I've been playing him. He's been awesome. If you're looking at box scores, you're going to pull it up and you're going to be like, wow, who's this guy? How did I miss what this guy's been doing? He's been playing awesome for a while now. Keep in mind, he's a low usage guy, relying on efficiency from a scoring standpoint to get there, and or steals and blocks and rebounds, and those peripheral stats. Highly volatile, and this rotation can be pretty volatile. And what you'll see the Blazers do, if It's like when Shaden Sharp and Scoot Henderson come in, they can get yanked so fast because like they are just, especially Scoot. I mean, actually, and Shaden Sharp, if he's missing shots, he's going to get yanked. Where Kamara's been kind of like a glue piece that they can like leave in there, let him cook. But against a second tier Jazz team where half this lineup should be in the G League right now, you could see many different things happen. Like I would not be surprised if at the end of the night we're looking at this. Scoot Henderson went off, Shaden Sharp went off, and like you could even see like Delano Banton have himself a game. So while I love Denny and Kamara and Simons, whatever, don't discount some of these other pieces on the Blazers. You're going to see fire emojis by the names. You just are. It's too good of a matchup. They have too good of a total. The pace is going to be elite. There's going to be some awesome options here. The other guy that I want to mention is Klingon. He was what was he over the weekend? 60% owned, 60-70%. I mean, he was massive, Joe.
I don't know exactly what he was owned, but yeah, he was chalkier. I think it was a rough slate.
What's he going to be tonight? Like, what are the ownership projections have him? He got into foul trouble.
Saber is showing about I think 12%, and the foul trouble that you mentioned is correct. And not only that, AP they got blown out, or they blew him out, one or the other, right? And it's like, so Duop played the final like 10 minutes of the game, and so I personally think I don't think we've seen the ceiling tapped for him, and I think this is a perfect spot for it to happen. Now, of course, if the game is a blowout one way or the other, could Klingon not play a lot? Yeah, certainly. But like you said, Banton could easily get one. But that doesn't mean I shouldn't buy on a 12% Klingon, especially when I personally believe by the time we get to like mid-March, Klingon's going to be like 7K if Ayton is continuing to be out, right? So I want to keep buying on Klingon as long as it looks like the rotation seems good, and it seemed good as there's just foul trouble was the issue. At least that's what you're saying.
Yeah. The way I'm handling this, I think, because it's a multi-entry night for me, something we talked about earlier, I think it's a great multi-entry slate. I obviously cap probably 3 to 4 max per team, most likely 3 max. What I like to do just to make it easy, man, going, I don't know if you like try test this out, over project all of them, at least the guys that you're most confident in, but then put a cap on their max side percentage. So maybe it's like 50 or 60%. That way it's forcing in the Blazers so that they're in every single one of my lineups, but you're getting a mix and match type of approach. So I'll get some Scoot Henderson. I'll get some Shaden Sharp because I do think that you're going to see 3 or 4 players from the Blazers absolutely crush, and I think you're going to need them. It's just tough to say like which ones. Like, yeah, we can sit here confidently and say it's going to be Denny Avdia and Anthony Simons, and Tamuni Kamara, since he's been crushing. That's the easier approach here. But again, I would not be surprised at all if it was Scoot Henderson, who's been good in these easy matchups. He has some monster performances behind him, and he does so recently too. Like he has a 44 piece against Orlando not long ago, and he had that stretch against the Bulls, Nets, and Rockets where he had big games too. So like the opportunity is there in the right matchup, and I do think this is the right matchup. And the other thing with Shaden Sharp that I like is the positional flexibility. You can play him at the small forward spot. So again, very high on the Blazers here. I want exposure to them. I just think there's so many different ways that you can play this game. The chalky way is through the starters. I think in tournaments, in large field, the sneaky way is taking some risk with the Shaden Sharp, the Scoot Henderson plays of the world. And then the tough part about the Jazz, well, it's not necessarily that tough. We know the guys on the Jazz side that produce. Like Micah Potter, if he starts, I have no interest. Like he'll take 2 shots and play 30. Like if he plays 28, 30 minutes, he might shoot the ball 4 times. Like I don't want that. We know Keontae George is not a bench player, but Will Hardy has him coming off the bench for whatever reason. He's still playing starter minutes, and he's been awesome. He's been absolutely ridiculous. He's been better than Isaiah Collier. I definitely want to be overweight on him because it's like, look at who else is out there. And Vegas thinks it's going to be, a 7-point game? I mean, I can't see how Keontae George isn't a phenomenal play. And then Sensabaugh, a good usage guy. He's going to be chalk that I'm willing to eat. And then it really, really depends. Like I think they got to play KJ Martin a lot of minutes. We obviously haven't seen too much of him on this team. I think tonight is the perfect night. Throw them out there against the Blazers, another team that, yeah, they blew out the Hornets. They could easily lose to the Jazz tonight. I would not be surprised at all if that happened. It would be hilarious, yeah, for sure, but it would not be surprising. That's how this team is. It's just absolutely ridiculous. But I do think KJ Martin's going to be a really nice value play, assuming he's in that starting lineup and assuming they give him minutes.
Yeah, like you said with the Portland Trail Blazers, I do something similar where I make sure to get exposure to them, but I don't want to be overexposed to like just one of them too much, right? I want to mix and match because it's unpredictable who the guy that's going to pop off is going to be.
So, my last note too is the last time Walker Kessler was out, I think it was against the Clippers, and Kyle Filipowski, he played 37 minutes. So, again, likely due to Zubac on the other side and them needing size. And if the Blazers go away from Klingon and maybe it's Jabari Walker, the Jazz could go smaller, but I just think they have limited options. And I think they're forced here to play Kyle Filipowski a lot of minutes. So obviously it's the Jazz and Will Hardy, and who frickin' knows? Yeah,
I don't feel super confident to do that, but like I will admit he's like kind of like the only big man on the team, so I get it. Someone asked in the chat, Klingon or Hartenstein? It's clearly Hartenstein based on they're different prices, right? But I do think Klingon's a really good tournament play, and so is Hartenstein. But I do like Klingon a lot. He's definitely someone I'm very interested in on this slate. All right, we've gotten through all the games, AP. We did get word that Killian Hayes is starting for the Brooklyn Nets. He'll remain in the starting lineup. Does that change any of your opinions on things?
No.
Okay, I figured it wasn't.
I'll play the role of JT Hayes, the voice of reason. I'm not playing Killian Hayes. I mean, if like NBA radio is making fun of him, they were mainly making fun of Philly. This was on Sunday, the guys that were on it. But they were throwing all kinds of shade at Killian Hayes, like making fun of Philly for losing to a team starting Killian Hayes in the year 2025. So I'm not playing him tonight in this matchup. I mean, like, look, man, going like, all right, we all make fun of the Wizards. Obviously, they're a terrible basketball team. Individually, they have good defensive pieces, though, and so at times you see them play decent defense. We've seen it with Keyshawn George and Bilal Coulibaly. So do I think they're a good basketball team? No, I don't. Not at all. I'm just saying they have pieces right now, Marcus Smart, if he plays some minutes, and that are at least decent defensively. So I think this game could be a bit more on the boring side, the Nets Wizards.
I think I'm currently playing for that game to do pretty bad. Like I think I'm hoping
I agree.
One way or the other, it just gets sloppy. I mean, I'll have exposure to it, but I'm going to be more under on that game and over on some other games. So, all right, let's get to the plays of the day. AP, who do you got? Who's your play of the day?
Oh man, are you ready with yours?
Yeah, I'll give out a Portland Trailblazer in the late night hammer. It's Donovan Klingon. I'm going to keep taking advantage of the opportunity. Listen, if they go small, they go small. It'll hurt me, but I want to be overweight on him. He's going to be like 12% owned. I would want to make sure I have like 20% or more. I think he's a really good play. So give me Donovan Klingon against the Utah Jazz in a game that's going to be a really good fantasy-friendly game. You can run back some Jazz options if you want. So Donovan Klingon will be my play of the day. AP, you ready with your play?
Yeah, so I'm between two, and they're two that like I just think are absolutely like unowned, and I think it's an interesting slate to get a little bit different. It's Scoot Henderson or Shaedon Sharpe. I think I'm going to go Scoot Henderson, even though I like the positional flexibility with Shaedon Sharpe. I just think that there's times in the second unit where in these easy matchups where he's absolutely cooking, they extend his minutes a little bit. And I think we see that tonight against the Jazz. It's just too friendly of a matchup. Simons is kind of like Simons has his moments and he's been good. I can't tell you how many times I'm watching Anthony Simons and I just watch him clank, miss shots, and they have too many guards. And then you've seen Scoot Henderson. He can do the same thing. He can absolutely do the same thing. I think he's just better at getting to the rim. And this is going to be a matchup where they have absolutely no rim protection. So I think Scoot Henderson at what, like 1% ownership, 1.5, maybe less. This is like the $15 flagship play on. I will say that.
No, I mean,
That's my play.
I'll probably be overweight on him, so I get it, AP. Trust me. Like he's a good play.
What do you think he is though? I'm showing like 0.5% ownership. And look, point guard is absolutely loaded. It's not, again, play of the day, kind of misleading. I think unowned tournament play of the day is how I would coin it a little bit better. But I think he's gonna put up like a big number at like no ownership. So
yeah, I currently see 3%, but yeah, he won't be owned. So he's someone I'm sure I'll have some exposure to. I'm sure I'm going to be backloaded for that final game and have a lot of exposure to it. So that is it, though. Let's wrap it up. Let's get on out of here, and everyone get in the Discord chat. Come hang out with us. We'll be breaking down the rest of the games and answering your questions over there. Use that code RPS15, and also hit the like on the way out and subscribe to the channel to find out when our shows go live. But for me, Mango and AP, we'll see you guys later.